the last thing you do.
Yes.
I talked earlier about this formula of meet, like, know, and trust. And you've got to get all four of those things out of the way before a sales opportunity can take place. And sometimes, and that meet, like, know, and trust, people think, well, that's a 6-month thing or an 8-month thing. That can happen in a single conversation. It just depends on how good you are at building the relationship. But if you don't meet me, if we haven't actually looked into each other's eyes, as it were, then we can never get anywhere. And after you meet me, then you have to start to get to know me a little bit, know who I am, know what my values are, know what my passions are. At that point, you start to like me because you know me and you've met me and you know me and you start to like me and we have a rapport. And then you trust me and you feel that if you do business with me, that I will do what I say I'll do, that I'll meet your, that I'll be there for you, that I'll meet the need, I'll fill the bill, I'll deliver the product.
Yeah.
And only then can I ask you to buy something and actually give me money for a product.
Yeah. And you say that whole process, is it meet, know, like, trust?
Meet, like, know, and trust. MLKT. Yeah.
Meet, like, know, trust. You say that can all happen in the span of one conversation if things go well and you're good at it. Yeah?
If the conditions are right and you're good at it and you've got that confidence that you teach, if we've got the confidence, it goes our way a lot quicker. Yeah. The reason people do business networking is because not everybody has the ability to do that. Brad Burton, the founder of For Networking, he can walk into a room, have a conversation with you, win your trust and your confidence in a matter of minutes. And I think Brad Burton, 8 out of 10 people that Brad meets, he could probably sell them a car on the first date. Not everybody has that kind of confidence, and it's taken Brad a long time to get to the point where he has that. He would tell you that 12 years ago, and maybe even 6 years ago, that he didn't have that. Yeah. But he has a certain amount of stamina and credibility now that means he could literally sell you a car in a first conversation. But most people aren't like that, and that's the value of networking, because it gives you the time to build those relationships. You might meet them at that first event. And then you see them at 3 or 4 events and you start to like them. And then you've been to 6 or 8 events with them and now you know them. You've had one-to-ones with them. You've had coffee with them. You've sat next to them and eaten breakfast. And so now you know them. And then they're doing the 4 sites and the 42nd round and they're talking to you and they're helping people and they've got a reputation and people are talking about them. Now you trust them. And once you trust them, then they can sell you something or buy something. And it's not always about selling me a product or me selling you a product. Sometimes that meet, like, know, and trust, the goal of that is to look for ways we can work together. A lot of small business owners, certainly at networking events, people are looking for someone to sell to, in some cases someone to buy a product from. But what a lot of people need from networking events is someone to collaborate with.
Yes.
I do a product, you do a product. If we put our heads together, we can do a better product that will widen the audience for us. But I'm not going to get into business with you if I don't trust you.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's what networking opportunities are for. That's why people go to networking. I see people all the time go to a networking event, go to 2 events, and then say, well, I've been to 2 and I didn't sell anything, so it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But those same people, if they stick with it, 3 months and 6 months later, you can't drive them away with a shovel. You can't beat them off. There's someone, and it's a mutual acquaintance. You'll know who I'm talking about. But a friend of mine and a colleague now, a member of For Networking, one of my team members, and he's actually part of my support team. But he's a guy named Todd, and Todd does social media. And there's a lot of there are some brilliant people doing social media. Todd's one of them. There's also some scammers out there. And there's some people that sell you social media packages and take your money and do a few tweets for you and do some Facebook stuff, and they don't really do anything. Their greatest accomplishment is the fact that they convince you to give them 3 or 4 payments before you catch on. What's different about Todd is that Todd helps people. He's visible and he teaches people, and you can call Todd and ask for help, and he'll give you the help without giving you a sales pitch or an invoice. And his goal is that if he gives you enough help, it's like a gateway drug. You have 2 or 3 conversations with Todd, and you just want to throw money at him because he's so good at what he does. Yeah. And there are people all across For Networking that are the same way. They build reputations and they're visible and they do stuff. Lee Rickler, another longtime member out of London. Lee is a web designer with a big focus on WordPress. And Lee gives good advice, and he's straight, and he doesn't try to baffle you with bullshit. He dazzles you with brilliance. Mm-hmm. And Lee creates the conditions that make it easy to buy because he builds a relationship with you. He does the meet, like, know, and trust. Then he tries to sell you something. Richard Eaton, who works for a company called Appware, and Richard is a guy that you can ask anybody and they'll tell you Richard does what he says he'll do. He never lets you down. And you hear a lot of stories about people who are getting apps designed and it just goes on forever. The product never gets finished. And you keep getting invoices, you keep paying a bill, and then at some point what a lot of a lot of these developers and web designers, social media people, these people that have these kind of intangible products, what happens is the relationship ends simply because you ran out of the energy to keep the relationship going. Mm-hmm. You paid the money and you got some stuff, and maybe you felt good and maybe you didn't feel good. Maybe you had something and maybe you didn't. You find these people like Todd and Richard and Lee Rickler who deliver. But the reason you feel good about working with them is everybody will tell you that they do what they say they'll do. And that's the trust. And when you have that trust like they do, it makes it so easy. It makes it so easy.
Plus, of course, a very important thing to remember that is even those people, they were new at their very first meeting. So if you're going to your very first meeting, you're not experiencing anything that they hadn't experienced, which means, of course, there's no reason why you can't, over time, build up that trust and attract that trust from other people and become the sort of person that people like Michael will speak about on shows around the globe, because you've made those connections through networking, because you've stuck with it, you've improved your speaking skills, you've built up your confidence, and you've stuck at it. I guess that's probably the biggest lesson from here is these things, they can take time. You need to stick at it to get better at it, and over time you will master it. It's not a thing that, as you said earlier, you turn up for a couple and then go, oh, well, that didn't work, I'm going to have to do something else. You have to stick with it and make it work.
Well, just consider where I ended up. 2 weeks ago was the 5-year anniversary of that very first meeting in For Network. That very first time I went through the door and I walked into that room, and Terry Cooper just said, "Hi, I'm Terry Cooper, and I'm on the team, and I just want to welcome you and come in here, and I'll tell you what's going to happen today." Now, what I didn't know at the time was that Terry Cooper was the chairman of For Networking, and now he and I sit together on the board of directors of For Networking, along with Brad Burton and Jason Dutton. And 5 years after that first meeting, now I actually am part of the organization. I'm on the senior leadership team, and I work with team members all across the country, England, Scotland, and Wales, as you described. About 840 team members, I think, is our head count today, that put on 250 meetings every fortnight, 5,000 meetings a year, all across the country. Yeah. And all I did that first day in September of 2012 was walk into a meeting. Yeah. And it just turned out to be the right place for me. Mm-hmm. It was a brilliant organization. I had no customers on that first day. Mm-hmm. And 3 years later, when I was offered a full-time role and was asked to join the board and be part of the process, I had built a business that was far more successful than the business I left behind in America. I grew my business twice as fast here, simply because the environment was right.
Yeah.
And if you remember me standing up and going, "Oh my God!" As soon as I open my mouth, they're going to realize that I'm an American. I'm still an American 5 years later, and I still play off of it sometimes. But I built those relationships. I built relationships with literally thousands of people all across the country, and used it to build a business. If I had walked out of that first meeting after realizing I was an American and went, "Wow, I can't do this," it's nerve-wracking. And it really did. I never let it show, or at least I don't think I let it show. But in the back of my mind, that 42nd round, I was like, "Oh my God." And they did literally. There were people in the room who, when I stood up and started talking, they looked up at me from their bacon, and
Wow.
and you could hear people going, "He's an American. He's an American." Somebody leaned over to Terry Cooper and said, "I didn't know we let Americans into FOR networking." And as I said, now 5 years later, it's become my life's passion. It's what I do. It's the greatest opportunity I've ever had. I'd have never gotten the opportunity to do the stuff I do, to talk to you about the business, and not just about the business, but about networking as a skill and a lifestyle. I wouldn't have gotten to know some of those people I talked about if I hadn't just gone to that first meeting and stood up and said, "Hi, I'm Michael Nagels with Strother Web Solutions."
Yeah. What a journey, and who knows what the next 5 years will have in store for you.
Yeah, it scares the hell out of me. I mean, six years ago right now, we were still living in America. We were selling off all our stuff. We literally sold everything we owned.
Yeah.
Put our clothes in a suitcase and our pictures and mementos in 4 cardboard boxes, and grabbed 2 teenagers, put them on an airplane, and moved halfway around the world. And it was one of the greatest things we ever did. It was great for all of us. It was the perfect decision. I've never ever looked back on it with regret.
Never look back with regret. What a perfect way to finish up. It's been amazing talking with you, Michael. I've learned a lot from this. I know our listeners will as well. If they want to find out more about you or network or get in touch, what's the best website, best place for them to go to reach you?
Honestly, these days, the place where you and I met is probably the best way to not only connect with me, but know more about me and FOR networking and networking in general. And that's on Facebook. We've got one of the fastest growing groups on Facebook. I haven't looked at it recently. I think we got about 23,000 people in there. It's very active, very vibrant, very buzzy. It's a room full of adults, but it's a community. Mm-hmm. But if you go on Facebook and you search for networking community, put the number 4 and the word networking. So search for FOR networking community, and you'll find us on Facebook. Come on in and join in the conversation. That's where it all starts. You can also obviously, wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out that we have a website, and you can go to fornetworking.biz and learn more about us. And you can follow me on Twitter at 4NWorks. So that's the @ symbol 4NWorks. And we look forward to meeting anybody that wants to be a part of the fun.
Thank you once again for being a fantastic guest, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for joining me.
I've enjoyed it, Keith. It's been an interesting afternoon, and it's flown by, hasn't it? So it's a fast hour when you're having fun.
You've been listening to the Confidence Alchemist radio show. To find out more, visit theconfidencealchemist.com.
I can do anything. I can reach any goal today. I can do what I want. I can be what I want to be.
Culture on Fire Radio.